Hello and welcome to Harvest to You. I'm Pastor Marc, and it is a blessing to have you with us today. Listen, before we start the sermon, I want you to know about harvesttoyou.org. This is a space where you can find additional resources like sermons and devotionals, even a book I recently wrote. It's also a space where you can request prayer. I know that life can be hard, even lonely sometimes, and we would love to come alongside you with resources, equipping, and prayer for your life. Head on over to harvesttoyou.org. Let me start today with a moment of honest confession. If you took the practices of Jesus that we've covered this far, and if you're new, we're in a series on the practices of Jesus. October were practices of engagement. November, that's the month we're in now, not October. We are on practices of abstinence. And if you took all that we've covered so far and you made a report card out of it, like each practice is a subject and then you get a grade, I'd have an okay report card. I'm not perfect. I'm not like an A+ student. I'm not going to be the valedictorian, but I'm going to be an A/B student mostly, maybe a C+ in there. Like we talked about fasting last week. And by the way, it was such a joy to hear from so many of you throughout the course of the week, just different texts and conversations in the hallway and emails on, hey, I'm trying this for the first time, or I have some questions, or a mom telling me, hey, my teen daughter told me don't pack a lunch for me for school for Wednesday because me and my friends we're going to pray and fast with the church, or a teacher stopped me and told me, hey, this boy came in my classroom and I said, are you going to lunch? Where's your lunch? She said, no, I just want to read my Bible. I'm gonna fast today with the church. And just so many beautiful stories like that. It was awesome. But if you gave me a grade on my report card, I've done some fasting. I know a little bit about it, and I'd have an okay grade. If you graded me on generosity, my wife and I have a regular pattern of generosity in our lives. That is a discipline that we've grown in over the years. I'd have an okay grade. But if you gave me a grade on today's practice, I'm somewhere in between never turned in the assignment and failed the final. Like, it's not good at all, to tell you the truth. And you hate that as a pastor. You really don't want to preach on things that you don't have a solid measure of just consistency in, because you feel like a hypocrite, to tell you the truth. I told my wife on, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, I forget which day now, but she asked me, what are you preaching on Sunday? And I told her I'm preaching on Sabbath, and she laughed out loud so hard, like a belly laugh. And if you know my wife, like that's not really her style. And she was not trying to be cruel, but she knew it was comical that I would preach a sermon on this, because if anyone stands to grow in this area, I'm going to be the first to raise my hand and tell you it's me. So this sermon may just be for me. It may be for you as well. I would say if you struggle with knowing how to stop and you can't sit still without checking an email or doing that one thing or making that quick phone call, then perhaps this sermon will be for you as well. But it is the practice of Sabbath, that of abstaining from work for a period of time. And I want us to begin in Exodus chapter number 20. It's interesting, even somewhat ironic, that the command for Sabbath begins with not Sabbath, but actually going and working. And here in Exodus 20, we find the Decalogue, what we would probably know as the 10 Commandments. And right in the middle of them is commandment number 4, the command that most Christians see as the junior varsity commandment. We would be sure to say, don't murder, that one's still good. And don't commit adultery, yeah, it's still bad. Sabbath, what does that mean? Do we have to do it? And here it is, commandment number 4. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. Now, before we go any further, let's at least acknowledge what God starts with here. The command to rest is built on the expectation of work. This sermon is not about work. It's actually about the opposite of work. But it's important to note that God never said, 6 days shalt thou scroll on thy phone, and the 7th day scroll more slowly. That's not what he said.
He said 6 days, go ahead and work. And he pictures people, a society, spending 6 days building, laboring, solving problems, raising families, sweating, pushing forward. He pictures that for sure. And Sabbath is not meant to be for the lazy. Sabbath is meant to be for the productive. And the majority of our week is supposed to be spent in productive work. That's important for us to remember, that work in the Bible is not just tolerated, work is celebrated. Work is a good thing. Work is humanizing. It is good for us. It's good for our families. It's good for society. Work was part of the creative intention of God, both in that he worked. In the beginning, God went to work. He created. And then he made Adam, and he gave Adam a job long before sin ever entered into the world. So work is a beautiful thing. Sabbath isn't for lazy people, but it is for those who give themselves fully to something for 6 days of the week, pouring out energy and carrying responsibility. It is meant to be a gift to give a day to stop and to breathe and to worship and to rest. But it's for those who first go. Then it tells you the rest of the command in verse number 10. The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. So if you're wondering what Sabbath is, Sabbath just means to stop, to cease, to desist. And you say, stop from what? Well, it's right there. Stop from work. We are to work with intentionality, and then we are supposed to stop with intentionality. So this actually is a sermon for those that if you feel yourself being worn down, if you feel yourself overloaded, overwhelmed, overworked, if you feel yourself emotionally exhausted or spiritually depleted, then this would be a good sermon for you. You're a great candidate for Sabbath, and Sabbath is the idea of stopping work. Verse number 10, this not doing any work is for you, thou and thy son, daughter, manservant, maidservant, even your cattle, don't have them go plow the field, nor the stranger that's within thy gates. Listen, I want the whole Jewish community, I want the whole Jewish society to shut down for a day and to not do any work. And I don't want it to be where you're having a break, but your kids are doing all the chores, or where your family's having a break, but you have a bunch of people who work in your business and they keep the business running. I want you to Chick-fil-A this thing, okay? I want you to take a day off and to shut it down and to put on the sign off the highway, closed on Sunday, you know? I want you to take a day off. This is important to note because the biblical idea of Sabbath, and this is something that gets conflated often, and it's a mistake that I've made many times in my life, is more than looking forward to the weekend. Sabbath is more than a off day. In the sense of our off days are many times I am off from work in the job that pays the bills and I have a W-2 wage with, but now I'm at home and I'm still working. I'm doing house chores, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm running errands, I'm making all those Amazon returns, like I'm doing that stuff. It is a day where you stop work from like your actual work, and then you stop work from the other work, from the side hustle, from the chores, from everything, and you just stop working, period. Like you do nothing. You're like, well, if I stop working and do nothing, what do you mean? Like, what am I supposed to do on that day? Like, just lay around? Like, what are you talking about? Well, the day is supposed to be filled with a few things, just not work. You say, well, what do I fill it with? Well, number one would be rest. Sabbath was designed first and foremost to be a day for rest. This is actually in the next verse, if you keep reading, verse number 11. In 6 days, God made the heaven and the earth, the sea, all that in there is, and then he rested the seventh day Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he hallowed it. Why would God rest on the seventh day? Was it because he was tired? The everlasting God got tuckered out. He had a headache. He couldn't hang anymore. He was like, making this whole world just wore me out. I need a break. It wasn't because he was tired. It was because he wanted to start a holy pattern, and the holy pattern that predates the Jewish nation, that predates the covenant, that predates Mount Sinai, that is woven into the fabric of humanity, was let's have 7 days, let's work for 6, let's have one off. It's interesting that if you take our calendar and just our cycles of life, they are based off of solar and lunar events. Our day is 24 hours because the earth spins one full rotation in a day. Our month is based off of a lunar cycle, that the moon is going to go through its full cycle in the span of a month. Our year is based off of the earth orbiting around the sun in 365 and 1/4 of a day, which is why you get a leap year and an extra day every 4 years. We go around every 365 days. But a week has nothing to do with anything that is lunar or solar. It's the one thing in our schedule and rhythms of life that do not have that. And many have said, well, then where did a week come from? How in the world did we establish this rhythm that is 7 days? Why did we do that? Was it just easy math with the year? What happened here? What happened from a Christian perspective and even from a Jewish perspective is that God somehow ordained a week when he made creation, and he ordained it to be that there's 6 days for work and there's 1 day for rest and for you to be renewed. There's a group of Christians who are quite literally religious about observing the Sabbath still. Of course, Jewish people are. If you've ever traveled to Israel, you probably noted while you were there and Shabbat rolled around or Sabbath rolled around that things shut down and you can't go to the stores any longer, and that still is baked into the fabric of society there. But there are Christian Seventh-day Adventists who still observe Sabbath in a very religious way. I would argue it in even a little bit of a legalistic way. But to their credit, they've figured out something that perhaps many other Christians have not. They're called Seventh-day Adventists because it's literally in their name. On the seventh day, they still want to observe Sabbath, and it's part of being in that community. And there's been a lot of studies done on both the happiness of that community, that they were listed on several different studies as one of the happiest communities on all of the planet, and also the health of that community, that they've been this bit of an enigma, that their lifespan in the Seventh-day Adventist community is like a decade longer than Americans and even the other people that live in their community. I won't get into all the studies and all the science and such, but it's remarkable to some people that here's this community that lives alongside other people that don't observe the Sabbath or even have some of their dietary restrictions, and they drink the same water and they breathe the same air and they drive the same roads, but this community lives a decade longer. And one of the things that they would say credits them for longevity of days in life is the fact that they take a break. But every week they have a day where they literally take a break. And many have noted that if you take 70 years of life and you add up every seventh day, if you take a break every week, that adds up to 10 years. That it's almost as if they are being given back every day that they take as a break, that somehow that's being credited to their account and they're living longer. It's a day of rest that God literally designed for humanity as a pattern that is you're not made for perpetual motion. It is this day that is intended to stop and to replenish and to literally rest the mind. Because when your mind is just spinning all the time with work, eventually you start to become lethargic. You start to color wheel. If you have a Mac computer, you know what I'm talking about. You start to become numb, uncreative, like your creative juices get stifled. You get distracted easily. You get very restless. Emotionally, when you don't take a break, you have a new normal that is just being irritable and cranky or angry or overwhelmed or cynical. Physically, you get worn down and your immune system starts to talk to you, and man, another cold? What's happening? Like your body's talking to you is what's happening. Your body's saying like you're not running this the right way and you're not giving the maintenance that you need to yourself. So there's a day that's literally a healthy day. It's a day for rest. Take a nap. There's also a day that's meant to be a holy day. The Sabbath is for rest, but the Sabbath is also for worship. I mentioned previously that rest is first and foremost, and I probably misspoke. Rest is really not foremost. Worship is probably foremost. You find in verse number 8 that the Sabbath day is to keep it, quote, holy. Verse number 10 is the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, meaning this is a day that's supposed to belong to God in some way. It's supposed to be a holy day. It's a day that is supposed to be filled with worship, both from a macro and a micro perspective. From the macro perspective, it's a day where humans can say, I don't run the world. You know what? If I stop, the world's going to keep on spinning, and life's not going to fall apart, and it'll go on. It's a day for us to remember how finite we are, how in some ways trivial we are, and that we can observe that we're not God, that he gets to run things and we need to take a break in ways that he never does. It's also a day, though, when you stop just as an act of trust, to stop, and for that, literally to stop is an act of worship for many people. If you're like me and you're a control freak, then stopping and doing nothing is very difficult, and it is an act of trust. In the same way that perhaps giving a portion of your income would be an act of trust and faith. If you tithe your income to God, tithing your time in this way is oftentimes an act of trust. But then you take that day and you plug into that day worship. You plug into that day anything that's going to index your heart towards God's reality and God's goodness. This is why Christians, if you read the New Testament, switched the Sabbath day from the last day of the week to the first day of the week. It was their day to worship. It was their day to celebrate Jesus and to come together, and they actually changed the day to the first day of the week. For many of you, if you were going to take a day that was a Sabbath, Sunday would very likely be your best prospect. It's not stop and do nothing so we can never come to church, we can never assemble, we can never worship, we can never be together. No, quite the opposite. It is a day that is intended to be for rest, so sleep in a little bit, get a nap, take a break, but also a day that's designed to be for worship. Some of you can remember when society was ordered, like our American society was ordered this way. I cannot, but my parents can faintly, and for sure my grandparents can. They remember a day where America was based off of largely a 5-day work week. And the intention of a 5-day work week was 5 days for the employer and then a day to do errands and chores and all the things around the house and to clean up, and that was largely Saturday. And then Sunday was the Lord's Day. That was, we didn't call it Sabbath really, but in effect we had a Sabbath of sorts that like the society not that many decades ago shut down. Some of you are nodding your head because you remember this. And going to a restaurant was like, no one's like open on Sunday, it's Sunday. Or the county became a dry county on Sunday. And there were no liquor stores, and there were no bars open because it's Sunday. Or the gas station was closed and people went to worship. Like our society used to be structured this way, but over the course of a few decades has become increasingly on, increasingly 24/7, increasingly like everything runs all the time. There's convenience, there's options, there's always something going. There are some advantages to that for sure, and I'm not even saying that I don't like some of that personally, but there is a huge disadvantage if you start to erode the concept of having a day where you stop for rest and for worship. For many people, Sabbath is this ancient unattainable idea that, like, sure, I'll come to church on Sunday for a couple hours, like if my schedule allows, but like asking for more than that's asking for a lot, Pastor. And what you need to understand is that this is a day that's actually meant to be good, both for your body and for your soul, for rest and for worship. But it's not just rest and worship. This is one of my favorite components, and something that I missed for so long, is that it's also intended for joy. It's designed to be a healthy day and a holy day and a happy day. There is one other alternate translation to the word Sabbath, and that is delight. Sabbath has the dual idea of stopping, but also delighting. Join in God and join in what we can put in our lives. It's interesting that this was kind of the point of contention that Jesus always had with the Pharisees. If you read about the life of Jesus, you'll read more about his practice of Sabbath from the standpoint of people nitpicking him and saying he was doing it wrong. You never get the impression that Jesus didn't observe Sabbath in any way, shape, or form and thumbed his nose at it and was like, no, I'm just going to work 24/7. Like, you never get that. But you do get the impression that the Jewish leaders were constantly breathing down his neck, saying that you're doing this the wrong way. Your disciples picked corn on the Sabbath day because they were hungry. You can't pick corn. You healed a guy on the Sabbath day. How dare you heal somebody? That's work. You can't do work. And they're constantly, after him for these sorts of things. What had happened is that the command that was given to be life-giving became something that was extremely burdensome. If you read the command in Exodus chapter number 20 for a Sabbath, you find that there are 39 Hebrew words that make up that command. The Jewish people had taken those 39 words and said, maybe there's something to that number. We're going to create a list of 39 ways in which you could break the Sabbath. We're going to make, God never said these 39 ways exactly, but we're going to make kind of a list of rules. Here are 39 ways that you should avoid doing this or this or this on the Sabbath. You should avoid walking this far. God never said how far exactly you could walk. You just have to, we'll say this far. You have to avoid cooking. You have to avoid this. Then they took those 39 ways and they made 39 subpoints for each of those ways, leading you to more than 1,500 ways in which you could break the Sabbath. Good luck memorizing those, right? But the Pharisees did. They had them all down, and they would walk around, they'd measure people. You broke rule number 1,417. You picked corn, that sort of stuff. And Jesus had nothing to do with that, with this extra religiosity that had been heaped on top of the Sabbath. And in an ultra-famous moment, in one of the best lines ever, Jesus tells them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. What is he saying in that moment? He is saying you've twisted and contorted the intention of this day. This day was made to be a gift for humanity. This was meant to be a blessing. God intended this to be a day that is a happy, healthy, holy day, and you've made the Sabbath so litigious that now it's burdensome and we're beholden to it. Instead of being something that we celebrate and rejoice in, now we're beholden to it in some weird way and we're handcuffed to all these rules. And he's trying to undo this. He's not trying to say that the Sabbath is not a principle that's valid and that it's not good for your life. Christians have long acknowledged that the Sabbath is not a command that we have to keep in the same way that Moses and the children of Israel were expected to keep it. That is for sure. But in so doing, we have really dismissed, I think, the concept altogether to our own demise. The Sabbath was made for man. It's as though God in creation said, hey, I'm going to make the world and the fish and the seas and all this stuff. And oh, by the way, I got a present for you. And Adam said, what's that? So I've literally made this, like created this for you. What did you make for me, God? It's good. It's like a really good gift. I'm in. It's the Sabbath. He made something for us to enjoy that would add benefit to our life and allow us to have some sort of rhythm and rubric in our life so that we're not stir crazy and restless all the time, as many of us are, including yours truly. One of the best lines that I read on Sabbath in preparation for the sermon was a question in which the author said, when you think about Sabbath, think, does this index my heart towards God? And if so, have at it. Does this give me rest and renewal in my life? But then ask yourself this question, what could you do for a 24-hour period that would bring you deep, soul-level, throbbing joy? And I thought, oh, that's a good question. I want to think about that. Like, what's a list of things that you could do? And not just one, like, could you do 5 of them? What they call pleasure stacking, where you take things that are enjoyable and joy-giving and pleasurable, and you stack them all together, one on top of the other on top of the other. Think Thanksgiving and Christmas. Why is it that Thanksgiving and Christmas are like on the top of everyone's list of the holidays they most enjoy? And if you enjoy Labor Day the most, okay, you're the anomaly, right? I'm not saying Labor Day is bad. I'm just saying it's not Thanksgiving and Christmas. Why do we enjoy these holidays so much? And there's a lot of answers to that, but think about it for a minute. They're days where the whole country Sabbaths. Almost everything shuts down. And we all stop, and no one has to feel guilty about it. No one has to feel guilty on Thanksgiving or Christmas that they stopped, that they didn't respond to emails, that they weren't, more in tune, that they weren't working. It's a day where we get to stop. We get to eat. We get to have family over. We have meals and feasts that are part of these. We have even worship sometimes that are part of these, and going around the table and saying what we're thankful for, or going to a Christmas Eve service. And we take these days and we put presents in those days and open them, and the joy of the kids. And what are these days for? We stop and we don't work, and we eat some food, and we pleasure stack the day, and we just have a great time, and we love it. We crave it. We crave it. Think about what you could do on an ordinary Saturday in the middle of February that would bring joy. My wife and I actually had a little bit of a conversation, and we have a long list. I've thought I'd share some of our ideas with you. So here were things, and these are entirely subjective. These may not be your cup of tea, but these were things that we put on ours. Get out of the house and go do a walk or like a hike in nature. Ride our bikes. Eat some ice cream. How many of you are in for the ice cream? Okay? You know what? Better than that, go take like that tub of chocolate chip cookie dough and put it like in a cast iron skillet, like a foot by a foot, like 1 square foot of cookie dough, and bake that up and then put the ice cream on top of it. That's a good time. That's like, think this when you think Sabbath, right? We were craving the sun. We said like sunbathing or swimming or having warmth. Taking a nap. I put on there, take a hammock nap. I haven't taken a nap in a hammock since I was like 8 years old, I think. But that just sounded good to me. Turning off technology. No phones, no TVs, no Xbox, no computers. Put them all away. Don't even look at them. For 24 hours, don't even look at a screen. That would be phenomenal. No cooking. That was Maggie's. I don't do a lot of cooking around the house. And she said, if we're including days that are good, that's work. Cooking's work for me, so no cooking. That's the deal. Have special meals. Paint by numbers. Anyone ever do the paint by numbers? It's weirdly relaxing for me. I can't even figure out why, but some of you would like to do a puzzle. I'm way too OCD for a puzzle, but paint by numbers, I like that. It's relaxing for me. Read a novel. Go to a friend's house or have some friends over and just have some quality time with friends. Eat brunch. We love brunch. Brunch is a great meal. You can put whatever you want on your list, okay? Think about the spiritual things you can do. I'm going to take some extra time. I'm going to journal. I'm going to read some extra scripture today. I'm going to have some time just for solitude and to be still and to be quiet. We're going to have some family worship as a family and turn on some music and sing together. The sky's the limit. But the point is, there was a day that was designed to be one where you rest, and one where you worship, and one where you joy. And I think that we all want this. especially if you're very active and you're working a lot, you're running the business, you're trying to keep up. I think this is something that we all deeply crave. What's interesting is that if you study the instruction on Sabbath, there's so much that I'd love to say, and I'm trying to keep it high level. But you have this moment in Deuteronomy. What happens is the command comes to the children of Israel in Exodus, and they're to remember, they're to look back at what God did in creation and remember that and observe it. Then the children of Israel are supposed to go into the promised land, and they don't. They procrastinate, they doubt, and God punishes them for it, and they spend 40 years wandering in the wilderness, and they don't have a lot to do. They're not building homes, they're not conquering, there's not a lot to do. And they're observing the Sabbath. God was sure to even help them observe the Sabbath and would, like manna, would send an extra day's worth of manna, this sweet bread, these King's Hawaiian rolls from the sky. He would send them down and give them 2 days worth so that they didn't have to go collect them on the Sabbath and that sort of stuff. And they're doing it. But then they get to the precipice of the promised land and they're about to go in, and things are about to get busy. They're about to conquer, they're about to build, they're going to settle down, they're going to be putting up the white picket fences. They're about to be very busy as they go into Canaan land. And Moses gets up and he recapitulates the law, the book of Deuteronomy, second law. He tells them the law again, and he tells them to observe the Sabbath again, but he changes a word. And instead of remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, the verb is no longer remember, but now in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 12, it is, quote, keep the Sabbath day. Keep meaning guard it or protect it. Stand guard over it. And it is almost as if Moses knows what is about to happen, and he is telling them, you're going to have to work at this in new ways. If you want the Sabbath to continue, it's going to require some serious intentionality, and you are going to have to guard it. It's as though he's painting a picture of a robber trying to break into the week's schedule and thieve the Sabbath from them. Which if you if you're American at all, you know exactly what that's like. Your job, your email inbox, all of the toys that you bought that you probably don't need, but they now all need maintenance and care, the hobbies, the kids' sports schedule, the busyness and pace of life, it will do its best, and it is very good at breaking in and robbing you of a day like this and pushing you out of some sort of Sabbath mode, and you need to be aware of that. You need to be aware that we are to remember that God ordained this, but we're also supposed to somehow guard it as sacred and not fill it, not trade it, not give it away, and be able to turn it all off. So it requires a lot of humility. It requires a lot of boundaries. It requires a ton of intentionality, not out of legalism, but out of love for God and wanting to worship Him, out of love for your family and wanting to prioritize just some fun and some joy and you all just being together, out of love even for your own way that you're made and your physical health and wanting that to be well. There is a cancerous restlessness that will get many of us if this is not guarded. So the question perhaps would be, how do we architect something like this? And I don't pretend to have all the answers. I'm going to give you a few suggestions from people that are better at this than I am, and then I'll try to stumble and fumble through it with you and get better. So how do you do better at this? How do I do better at this? Especially when perhaps your own human nature, I know mine does. My own human nature is like, if I'm not doing something, then I should feel guilty, pretty much. Or a society that's really good at keeping us spun up and very active. How do we fight against this? So, number one, I would say we may need to start small. If this is not a rhythm for you, you may need to start small. And to be clear, this is a good note. You may be in retirement mode, and it's like, oh no, this is so easy for me now. And you may need more of like engagement in community. That may be what's hard for you. But for many of us, this is where we're at and what we struggle with. If you are in retirement mode, be careful to not have like this pseudo off time versus work time where you're constantly like doing something but not doing something. That still does take some work, even if you're retired. But you may need to start small. This may need to be like 4 hours small. It's like, you know what? Saturday mornings are for Sabbath. We're going to sleep in until 8, and then we're going to cartoon it up with the kids, and we're not going to do anything till noon. It may be that it's an evening that's like, hey, Friday evenings, when we get home from work, we turn off the phones, we unplug, we do nothing, and we're going to have, a time from 6 p.m. till when we go to bed, and we're just going to have some joy, have some good food, just try not to do any work, no chores, no laundry. It may be that Sunday is the best for you. For many of you, most of you, it would be. That you'd want to center around Sunday some way. I'll be the first to tell you that's not for me, or probably even for like our church staff team. Sundays are beautiful days. They're days that are filled with worship and joy for us, but they are oftentimes draining days and depleting days, not replenishing days. That's a weird dynamic for a pastor, and that Sunday is not a Sabbath for me. It's not at all. So you're going to have to look at your own schedule and figure it out. You may have to start small. You may be able to ease into, okay, I'm going to start in the evening and I'll go till noon the next day. I'm not quite 24 hours, but I can start at 6 p.m., I can go till noon, and I can get 18 hours in. It's interesting to me that this is what the Jewish people did and do, that Sabbath started Friday at 6 p.m. and ended Saturday at 6 p.m. And I like that personally because it gives you some time on Friday where you can work up until Sabbath starts, and then it gives you some time on Saturday after Sabbath is over where you could do some work in the evening. So technically, in our sort of days, there's still time on each day, but there's a 24-hour period that was 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. I like to try to structure that way if I can, when I can, is to try to start in the evening and then go as late as I can into the next day, even if it's not a full 6 p.m. But the point is, do what you can. Look at your life, look at your schedule. I would challenge you. You got Thanksgiving coming, it's probably going to be a bit of a Sabbath, and praise God. You got Christmas Day coming, probably going to be a bit of a Sabbath. In between those two, I dare you to try to fit another one in. I'm going to try. I don't know if I'm going to succeed, but I'm going to try. I already know a couple weeks that I'm already 4 weeks out, and that week is booked solid. Like I don't have a Sabbath in there. But I'm going to do my best to see in the course of a month, can there be 3 of these days and see where it goes. I would encourage you to turn off the tech. You don't have to. That's not a rule from God, okay? You may have a job with no tech and you work with your hands all day, and having a family movie night is the most joyous thing you could think of. 2 thumbs up, have at it. But you may want to consider unplugging. Make a list of things that are pleasure stacking with your spouse, with your kids. What would be fun? What would be the good foods that we like to eat? Sabbath isn't for fasting, okay? That's not the day for it. It's a day to have joy. And then lastly, don't be an inflexible legalist, okay? It's not your goal to run around and measure everybody else and say, well, I do Sabbath on Sunday. You should do it too. That's the best day. It has to be. Or I try to get a full day every week, and you only get 8 hours. That's not the goal. The Bible is very clear that Christians have a lot of flexibility on this issue, but I think it's also pretty clear that it's not something that should be completely disregarded and act as though it's a nothing burger, because there's a lot of power that it brings to our life. We need to be engaged and we need to work, but we also need times where we stop and where there's abstinence in our life. In closing, I would draw your attention to Colossians chapter number 2. This is a beautiful note that I think as Christians we need to be fully aware of. We are told in Colossians chapter number 2, 2 things basically. Number 1, you get a lot of flexibility on Sabbath, and people shouldn't run around judging you. And if they do run around and judge you, don't accept their judgment. Tell them to go pound salt. That may be a little too crass or mean, but you can ignore their judgment. Here it is. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day or the new moon or the Sabbath days. People don't get to heap judgment on you about this. There was a ton of consternation in the early church because people were switching it from Saturday to Sunday. You're not allowed to do that. And there's this clear record of, yes, you can, but then don't miss this. All of these things, all of the meat and the drink and the joy that comes from that and the fulfilling sustenance we get from that, all these days that are designed for rest, they are a shadow of things to come. But the body is of Christ. Meaning both that the rest and the joy that we could get from even good food is just a whisper of what we're going to enjoy one day when we enter into that rest. When we're with the Lord and the satisfaction of our soul that we'll feel, that this is just, as good as it is now, it's just a whisper of what's coming. But also meaning that Jesus can satisfy you and give you rest in ways that nothing else ever could, including a nap. That there is a rest for your soul that you can get from the Lord Jesus that you're not finding other places. And if we're halfway honest, we know that life has a way of wearing us out and beating us down, and that we need days like this to recharge and replenish. But we also know that there can be an anxiety of the soul that is not about this life, but is about the life to come. That many people are gripped with worry and fear over what would happen to me if I didn't wake up tomorrow. Is there a heaven? Is it real? If it is real, would I go there? Have I done enough? Was my baptism sufficient enough? There are a lot of people that have this anxiety of the soul, and when they rest at night, they don't really rest because they're worried. And you need to know that Jesus never intended any one of us to live that way. He intends to bring what no Sabbath day could ever bring, and that he brings forgiveness. He brings adoption into God's family. He brings security to us, knowing that heaven is my home. All of my sins are gone. I am his and he is mine. And I don't have to go to sleep with a helmet on and one eye open, wondering what's going to happen. I can pillow my head and know that if I slipped into eternity, then I would be cared for, that Jesus is providing for me graciously, fully, freely, and not because I've done anything, but because he's done everything, and I can rest in him. There is a spiritual rest that is irreplaceable in the Lord Jesus that even the Sabbath day, as good as it is, couldn't bring. And may we acknowledge that while many of us need a Sabbath day in the physical, emotional sense, many of us need the rest of the Savior that is in a spiritual sense. To know that I'm forgiven and clean and secure. And if you don't know that, then I would want you to know that today. Jesus will forgive you and clean you and redeem you fully and freely if you put your faith and your trust in him. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you call out to him and you'll ask him, he will hear your cry and he will respond to it, and you can have a spiritual rest that's irreplaceable.
I pray that today's message challenged and encouraged you in your walk with Christ. And if this sermon was a blessing to you, know that it was made available because of our financial partners. I want to take a moment and invite you to be a part of that tribe. I know not everyone's in a position to give, and if that's you, then please just let this broadcast be a blessing. There are no strings attached. But if God's blessed you with the ability to give, I would love for you to link arms with us and support what God is doing here. As a small way of saying thank you for your generosity, I'd love to send you a copy of my new book, The Prayer Jesus Gave. This is a guided tour through the model prayer, the Our Father, as some call it. And if you've ever felt like your prayer life could use an upgrade, I know it will be a help. You can give and receive your copy at harvesttoyou.org/give, or by mailing a donation to the address on your screen. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next Sunday.